Well, Business Unity South Africa says it is pleased with the mix of skills and expertise on Eskom's new board. Let's take this conversation further. I'm joined now by Busa CEO, that's Kes Kuvadia. Kes, good afternoon, and thank you for your time. So the Eskom board had not really had a proper complement of members, the 13 non-executive directors, since about 2018. It's now been replenished, and in a major shake-up has actually happened. Your reaction as Busa, is this the right mix and men and women that are fit for purpose in this very moment?
Tudasila, thank you for having me, and hi to your viewers. Yeah, I think this is a step in the right direction. We've been calling for a couple of years now to replenish the Eskom board, which was at more or less half capacity and did not have the necessary skills, engineering, financial, accounting, and so on, to play the sort of strategic and oversight role that the board should be playing. And so we are very happy that a board has now been put into place, a new board. The announcement was made yesterday. We've looked at the CVs of the new directors, and as we said in our statement, we believe that this board has the mix of expertise and capacity needed for the board to play both an oversight role, a strategic guidance and direction role, and to hold the executive to account where they need to hold the executive to account, because that's part of the board's role. So we are very happy with that. We think it shows that we're taking governance seriously, and that we have a caliber of board that could actually play the role of managing the situation properly with management and giving the necessary direction, not just on the load shedding issue, but on how to restructure Eskom, how to position it in a energy infrastructure mix that will see Eskom as a player, but not the player.
I don't need to remind you, Mr. Kuvadia, that there's a view out there that says the shake-up needed to go beyond the board level. It needed to even reach the executive echelons of Eskom's governance structure. The indication at this moment is that that's not going to happen. The CEO, CFO, and COO will retain their positions. What's your thinking as Busa? Do these changes go far enough, or do they need to go even further?
Well, Busa has consistently been of the view that the Eskom executive, under very difficult conditions, is doing the best it can. Let's remind ourselves that this is a significant historical problem. Part of the history is the state capture and corruption that occurred. Part of the history is significant delays from the early sort of 2000s on rebuilding and maintaining infrastructure at Eskom. Part of the delays relate to boards that were not well capacitated and inappropriately capacitated to actually give the necessary direction. And part of this history and fallout of the previous administration, the state capture, that there's ongoing sabotage and so on at Eskom. So it's an extremely complex situation. And in the midst of that, we have to actually meet targets that we set for ourselves on the whole area of climate change and carbon reduction and so on. So it's extremely complex. We believe that the executive has, under difficult circumstances, been doing a reasonably good job. I think the minister announced, in his announcement, said that one of the things that the new board would have to do is assess the performance of the executive, as a board must do as part of good governance, and we would expect the board to do that. And we believe that it is the ambit of the board to do that, not the ambit of the share. And so the fact that we believe that we've got a good board in place, then the board must play its role of oversight and governance, and part of that is to actually assess the performance of the executive. And if the board is of the view, after going through processes and so on, that the executive is not performing, then that's the board needs to take a decision of what to
Yeah.
do about it.
What will you say to the contention that at Eskom, we don't have a board problem, but we have problems that go beyond? You can put any board you want. It will not change the fact that there's a significant electricity, and I know that it's nice and fancy to talk energy, but we are specifically talking about an electricity generation capacity shortfall. As this board, led by Mpomakwana, takes over, they still sit with that shortfall that has not been addressed at a policy level over a long period of time, and projects to replenish our capacity are stalled. They don't even get underway. So even this new board, in about 18 months' time, in a year's time, will be criticizing them.
Well, I think let's look at this within the context of what's happening in the energy area at the moment. So the president has announced his energy plan. NECOM has been put into place. We are certainly working closely with the presidency to see how we can assist in implementing the plan as quickly as possible. So if we have a situation where the energy plan begins to be implemented as quickly as possible, which begins to create an environment for renewables, embedded energy, gas, and other forms of energy to actually come on stream and get onto the grid. And a newly elected Eskom board, which we believe, as we said, has the capacity and expertise that's relevant to Eskom, if the newly elected board actually works with the executive and plays that oversight and strategic role to ensure that Eskom, the restructuring of the distribution arms and so on, actually gathers pace and actually concentrates on Eskom, the restructuring, so that, and we believe that this board has the capability of engaging robustly with the shareholder, because they have the expertise on the board and they can talk to the shareholder, not from a political point of view, but from the point of view of what do the engineers say? What needs to be done in that area? What needs to be done on the financial area? I think robustly engage the shareholder for an appropriate mechanism and an appropriate way forward to deal with the myriad of problems that has come. So we think that, sure, the board alone doesn't solve the problem, but what this does do is send out a very, very clear message from government.
Yeah.
That we are not making political appointments to the board, we are putting in the appropriate capacity.
Yeah.
We expect the board to assess the performance of the executive, as the board must do. And the board must obviously deal with the current load shedding problem. We're not going to get rid of load shedding until we get more alternative forms of energy on the grid, but let's try to ameliorate the problem and manage the problem as best we can, but also then guide Eskom in the role Eskom will be playing in a broader energy mix and a broader energy environment. And we need to look at that within that holistic context.
Lastly, Kaskovadia, how important is it that the composition of the new board includes people with experience in engineering and energy specifically, accepting as we do that they are not going to be the ones doing the work on a day-to-day basis. Certainly one doesn't expect that they will be doing the day-to-day oversight of power station managers and following through on how far is that project, how far is that project. But how important is that if we also add into that mix the fact that part of the challenge that has been identified is that not only do we have a generation capacity issue, we also have an issue with the non-performance of this old plant, this old Eskom plant, and this is where the undertakings have been made that we will improve the performance of the plant, and that has not happened. If you take everything I've just said, how important then is it that we have these engineers and energy experts in this new board?
We think it's critical. Absolutely, I agree with you that they obviously would not get involved in operational issues, and they must not get involved in operational issues. But what those people on the board can do within the context of a board operating together as a board, is ask the right questions. So when executive reports on certain things that entail technical engineering issues, how the plants are being run, why they're not being repaired, and so on, those people on the board have the knowledge to ask the right questions, to hold executive to account if the executive is not actually doing what they should be doing, and to actually give strategic direction and advice and guidance to the executive from a technically sound and a technically capable point of view. So we think that that is absolutely critical.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights here
Thank
on
you.
ENCA. That's Kes Kovadia there. He is the CEO of Business Unity South Africa, weighing in on the new Eskom board that has been appointed. Let's see how well they will do and how they will fare given the terrain that they've just walked into, the new Eskom board.